right, welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 7th day of February 2023. If you had a voice during the break, that was Martha Wangari, the Member of Parliament for Gilgil constituency in Nakuru County. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
How have you been?
Good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
I've not seen you this year.
Yes, I haven't seen you, but karibu sana.
Asante.
Bessie Robert Ngoi, Member of Parliament at constituency in Machakos County. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I am great. Never seen you here on Daybreak. Have you been here before?
No, it's my first time.
Oh, where's the red carpet?
Oh, yeah, we should. We'll be hearing your, what do you call it? The first speech in Parliament, what do you call it?
What is that?
The maiden speech?
Maiden speech.
So you'll be making a maiden speech.
Yes, I already
on Daybreak shortly.
You'll be heard without any interruption.
Oh, yeah? I'll give you that opportunity. Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei from Bomet County. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
How have you been?
Happy to be here and all is well.
Okay, great. And shortly, like I told you earlier on, I'm told I should tell you welcome back. You've been here before this year. Governor of Kakamega, Fernandez Baraza, will be joining us shortly to have a conversation about the situation in the counties. And the reason is that you've seen what the government, that is the national government, and the Council of Governors, they've been saying that the government says it can only afford up to 385 billion shillings as a share of revenue to the counties. The governors are saying they want 425 billion shillings. The CRA, Commission on Revenue Allocation, are saying they can only afford up to, they're allocating or proposing to allocate 415 billion shillings, inclusive of the Equalization Fund. We'll be talking about that later on. But this morning, if you look at the papers, on the front page of the Daily Nation, is Form 1 pain as schools defy state. Some principals have ignored Ministry of Education's guidelines by turning schools into money-minting businesses, exploiting parents through exorbitant prices of items such as uniforms, and imposing extra levies and other hidden charges. Of course, the image of the young ones, as they reported for Form 1, these ones at Kagumo High School in Nyeri County yesterday, as they assist each other to ferry their boxes containing their belongings that will be useful for the next 4 years. On the front page of the Standard, Raila's movement signals end of Azimio. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has formed a caucus called Movement for Defense of Democracy, which echoes his well-known political trick of dumping and forming new alliances after every election cycle. Will it gain currency like those before it? Of course, those are just some of the issues that are on the two-day list, including that story at the bottom of the Standard. Tax wars escalators MPs, as MP orders Treasury for records. Although tax exemptions and waivers are not illegal, Kenya Kwanza wants all records of the same from 2018 to 2022 tabled in Parliament, while Azimio blasted Ruto for relying on what they call incompetent people for advice. And let me begin with yourself, Honorable Ngoi. As you make a maiden speech on Daybreak, your thoughts about what's going on with the Form 1 that are reporting, the Form 1 learners that are reporting to school at a time that we have the situation with transition to grade 7. What have you seen in your constituency that is worth the national attention?
Well, there's low reporting for students. Basically, parents are struggling. The issue of money, poverty, all these things are contributing to low turnout. We are waiting for CDF money to be full. Currently, the money we got is so little compared to what we expected. So we hope the government is going to listen to the cries of parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Honorable Martha Wangari, your situation in your area, what have you seen?
First of all, Sam, allow me to say Happy New Year. I've not been here.
Oh, yeah, Happy New Year.
I also want to join my colleague, Honorable Basil, because yesterday I spent the day in the constituency and we were trying to issue some bursaries for Form 1 students that are going to report.
Right.
And I can assure you the situation is actually dire because of, first of all, the countrywide drought situation. And I know I have a program that I pick full scholarships. You know, I have Equity taking 21 this year. I have JKL taking another 20, and I take 25. Kids that if you don't have CDF, these kids will not go to school. And sometimes, I know you saw us in Mombasa, we were trying to push for this money to be released by Treasury. And I keep saying, it is not for members of Parliament. I do not need bursaries for my children. But I can tell you there's children today, if I don't have that CDF, that will not go to school. But we have even a bigger problem. And this bigger problem is what we are calling the junior secondary school. Because initially, the money we would have for bursaries would be for Form 1s to Form 4s. Now they are coming with junior secondary school and we cannot fund it. And my issue with the Ministry of Education and the way we are doing this transition is that we are going to have dropouts who are 11-year-olds. I have one school in Morindat that has a class which is supposed to be 45 kids. Only 12 have reported because you need, say, 4,000 for a locker, 5,000 for new uniform, you need some money for lunch. So without basically 15, 20,000, you cannot enroll a child to junior secondary school. So what we should be talking about and what we want to hear the ministry talk about is what has really changed. And don't forget even the culture and norms, because you're telling a class 7 or rather grade 7 child to wear a trouser, and a grade 8 or rather class 8 is wearing a short. And psychologically, we are torturing the children that we are raising. This junior secondary school is going to generate a bigger problem than what we even have in Form 1 and Form 2. So we expect that all the regulations that have dealt with this junior secondary school to come through Parliament, through the Delegated Legislation Committee, so that we're able to scrutinize it. And it might take some, I would say, without fear of or even any iota of doubt. First of all, let every public primary school be gazetted as a junior secondary school. Don't tell kids of Odube in my constituency, they cannot be in that school. They have to go to Nderit or they have to go and look for another school. Secondly, the locker they were using in grade 6, can they carry it to grade 7? What is this madness of getting a new locker? Thirdly, let the uniform they were wearing be transited. What has changed? We are bringing a situation, and the next thing we'll be dealing with is circumcision. I would say, like in our culture, they will say now because you're in grade 6 or going to grade 7, you'll be circumcised. And normally they do that after class 8. So there is a total culture confusion. And I think we can be able to deal with that. First of all, by saying we gazette all of them, transit all the issue, the lockers, transit the uniform, and the teachers. By the way, junior secondary schools have only gotten one teacher for 14 subjects. Maybe 2-3 books for 14 subjects. What are we talking about? I think we are not ready, and the Ministry of Education is messing this class, this specific grade 7, because we already told them you will not be graded. They did exam, picked schools, then we returned them to primary schools, and I think that confusion is even bigger than what we are seeing in secondary.
But when the ministry said that they were doing assessment to pre-qualify sort of at the schools that are fit for JSS, how then can we turn that and say that every other school should be allowed to if they don't all have the capacity? By
the way, all the regulations, some, and the law we make is for man. I mean, even initially, they were to be hosted in secondary schools. And my take was, and we said so, that's why we reverted to primary schools, you cannot take an 11-year-old to go sit with a 17-year-old in a secondary school. And don't forget, the number of secondary schools we are talking about. In Gilgil today, I have 76 primary schools. I have 36 secondary schools. I have 1,400 square kilometers of land to cover. So how do you tell these kids to fit in those schools? So the argument of fitting in primary schools was reversed. So nothing cannot be reversed. Even this one can be reversed, by the way, because we have experimented and it is not working.
Right.
Yeah.
And for you, Senator, have you seen any challenges that are peculiar to your area or just national?
Thank you, Sam. Of course I have. And nothing can be further from the truth in terms of the challenges that the transition process with JSS is not properly handled. It is as bad as Wangari says. I attended a meeting last week of a school where the first assignment that the principal has had is to convince the class 8, which is the last lot of the 8 for 4 now, to convince them that they are still the seniors in the school. Because the transition in class, that is now grade 7, are different in terms of dress code. They are seen as they've joined now a junior secondary school. Remember, these other ones are in a primary school by virtue of course, their 8-4-4 system.
Right.
And it became a whole 2 hours conversation to tell these boys and girls that, look, despite the fact that there is a class that is putting on trousers in a different kind of environment, having different teachers, and all that about the syllabus of being a junior secondary school, it is a problem. 2, the assessment story which you just mentioned. We spoke about this, remember, last time here. You cannot purport to say that on the basis of the fact that you do not have a laboratory, or you do not have a library, or you don't have this number of classrooms, you cannot transition your grade 6 to grade 7 in the same school. It is impossible. In my county, for example, if you have a primary school within, let's say, 3 kilometers square, it's one with which you know the number of students, the enrollment is sufficient, and you cannot then take from the neighborhood school an additional number because of the inability to accommodate. Right. So that in itself also is another problem that is not affecting not only my county, but across the way Mother has said. So the regulations which were passed for purposes of assessment, for purposes of deployment of the teachers. Because if you have not approved my institution, it definitely means I will not get the teachers who will be deployed. Right. I would definitely then be unable to have them in the next class. The other day we saw in Elgeyo Marakwet parents protesting with placards all over saying we have donated land. Some of them donated actually to construct what according to them was an additional class to facilitate transitioning to grade 7. But that primary school was not assessed as one to have an enrollment of grade 7, which is now the junior secondary school classroom. The parents said, we are not going to take our children to the next primary school because of obvious concerns. When I have a junior secondary school in my primary school, I will get an extra teacher as per now the communication that came from the ministry. Right. When I have an extra teacher, it means, of course, I will have another team of possible economic support to the community. The children will not travel far. Remember, these are still young boys and girls who cannot walk for as much as 5-6 kilometers to a school that has been assessed and upgraded. In short, we are saying there is absolute challenge. The headline here is showing us boys who are joining, this is Kagumo High School. Yesterday, I was resolving a situation where a parent went to school having purchased uniform and all those other requirements outside the school institution. The requirement in the school is that you pay to the school, you get supplied. Of course, on the basis of obvious arrangements that we have always been complaining about schools making money out of parents because they are forcing them to buy from specific suppliers. This parent has been told, you either pay 27,000 or you go back. The 27,000 they're being asked to pay is worth the items that they had purchased, they had carried. I had to intervene. I had to call the county director of education to find out why this is happening. And
were they allowed in?
They were, of course. I mean, we've got to help them. That is the reason why we in as leaders. But then assuming this was someone who had no ability to reach out to a leader who can intervene, what would have happened? Go back home or spend an extra 27,000 and have the stuff they had bought to go to waste. Right. It is that bad in terms of now the Ministry of Education Management and Supervision on compliance on a number of these regulations that they have pushed.
And Honorable Ngoe, the request, excuse me, from the President sometime last year was that yourselves would assist in channeling resources from the Constituency Development Fund to uplifting the state of facilities, putting up laboratories that junior secondary school learners will be needing. How far is that at a time that you're still struggling to even afford bursaries for them?
Well, the situation is very bad because currently, as we have all seen, the CDF money is not sufficient to be able to support the junior secondary school as well as what is needed in the new education infrastructure. What we are saying as members of parliament, actually we need to move the requirement from 2% of CDF to about 5%. This is to say we need at least minimum 200 million each constituency. And when we talk of the actual development, because without this money, then we are going, the education system will be paralyzed. Because if you look at most of the schools, from what my fellow leaders have mentioned, the situation is terrible. And you see with the drought eating the country, the situation is even getting much worse. Our parents are really struggling, and if you go most of the schools, I think in all constituencies, we don't have sufficient school to support junior secondary schools. And this is to say, if the government really wants to implement this particular innovation in terms of making it work, Either we give more money or we suspend it altogether, because most of the parents are struggling. And you see, a school cannot run without money. So if you tell, like what I'm reading here, the CS said, of course, the learners are not supposed to be turned home, or parents should be, in other words, allow students to continue learning without school fees. But if you look at our schools, one, we need school, we need food, school feeding programs. The money, government has not given us free, food for schools. That is still lacking. And if you tell the students to go to school, one, there's no food. Second, the basic infrastructure to support the learning is not there. That is to say, in principle, it's more hypothetical than the real, what we expect to see.
Okay.
So there's a lot to be done, and the government needs to wake up and be realistic as possible. Yeah.
Honorable Martha, you said that you have 36 secondary schools. How many are the primary schools?
76.
76. So if you had to afford a laboratory for each of these, how do you do that?
In fact, I think the infrastructure is a big issue that we have not even addressed, because we first of all are fighting to get the children into classrooms. And I think the challenge that we have right now is that the private junior secondary schools are already operational. And we are already discriminating children who come or attend public schools. Yesterday, as I was doing the Form 1 bursaries, I had parents asking me to help them with bursaries for junior secondary school. Yet we don't even have enough for Form 1 to the university.
I thought they're not supposed to pay. They're getting capitation of 15,000 per learner. I'm
just saying, what is said on TV is different from what is on the ground. I've told you of a school I know today, Morindat Primary, which grade 7 should have 45 children, has 12. Those who are able to pay and report. We are talking of dropouts, some of 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, and yet we have not even dealt with the transition to Form 1.
Right.
And you see, even going through the school itself makes a child grow. Yesterday, we were celebrating World Zero Tolerance on FGM. What this drought is doing and what this junior secondary school transition is doing is that it is getting these kids married off. Even if you read the newspapers today, you will see parents who are marrying off their daughters to raise money even for food. That means FGM is creeping back. We are having early marriages. We are having early pregnancies, and even for the boys is worse with the dropouts. This issue of capitation has not gone to junior secondary schools. First of all, they don't even have teachers. They are now being told open accounts. For what? The accounts they are opening for, if I show you, because I have some here that I've collected from my constituency, you'll see a desk is 5,500. Uniform is 4,500. Lunch program is, say, 3,000 to 5,000. That child without 20,000 will not report to a junior secondary school. And that is the reality. So people are opting, either if you have the capacity, you change your child to private school, which is almost impossible. And don't forget, we have had COVID for 2 years that grounded almost every operation. Now we are talking of countrywide drought system or drought problem that we can hardly get a meal a day for these children. So what the ministry is saying is totally different from what is on the ground. And I think there's a total disconnect in terms of, and I can't speak this with authority because I've just come from the constituency. People are now asking for money which we do not have. So let's not even talk infrastructure, because even if you do a laboratory, a modest laboratory would take, say, 2.5 million to 3 million. If you have 76 schools, what are we talking about? We are talking almost 140 or 150 million. Already in CDF, say even 100 million today. The applications I've got for bursaries in my constituency as far yesterday were over 10,000. Even if I give a minimum of 1,000, say 1,000 shillings, not even 2, you're already talking, what, 10 million. We are talking figures that are
10,000 applications.
Yes, 10,000 applications, by the way, and they're all deserving. All of them. And I can tell you when we were doing...
What is the minimum that you give?
The minimum for lunch programs, I would say 3,000 to 5,000. If you have a child going to a boarding school, it's 8,000 to 10,000. If you have a university child who is also supposed to get from this money, it is what? 12,000 to 15,000. To make sense. How many can you be able to cover? The infrastructure money you're left with, and that's a good thing with CDF money as compared to county monies. Ours is clear. on how you can use it. You cannot use more than 35% for bursaries. In fact, I wish I could use all of it for bursaries, because I think kids would be better even sitting on stones or under trees, but go to school. Because going through that system is very important. So the money you're left as a constituency with the development is, say, what, 45, 50 million? So when you divide that to education, to security, because chiefs will want offices, we want to buy desks, how much can you be able to do? So even if we do, it cannot be enough until there's a conditional and direct transfer from the Ministry of Education in their budget. Let them have an infrastructure budget going directly to the schools.
Very interesting and very heavy reality that is on the ground. And talking about money, it's a challenge that even the governors are facing at the moment. They want 425 billion shillings. The government is providing, or the national government is saying that they can only afford 385 billion shillings. Demand for resources too high, but at the same time, there is a demand for people to pay taxes. And we'll be listening to what Kimani Ichung'wah said yesterday in regards to waivers that may have occurred between 2018 and now. We take a short break. When we return, we'll continue this conversation.